Imagine walking into a parent-teacher conference. You sit down in one of those really tiny, brightly colored chairs.
Right, your knees are basically up to your chin.
Exactly. And you're hoping to hear how your child is doing. Like, are they making friends? What subjects are they actually interested in?
The normal stuff.
The normal stuff. But instead, the principal sits across from you, looks at this heavily annotated clipboard, and with total enthusiasm says, "Great news! Your child is a genius. Their head circumference grew by a full 2 centimeters this month, and their leg length is mathematically perfect for science."
I mean, you would probably assume you were being pranked, or you'd just grab your kid's coat and run.
You'd think they had completely lost their minds. But the wild thing is, well, this isn't a joke. If we look back at early European scientific pedagogy, this was the reality.
Yeah, it was.
This was considered the absolute bleeding-edge pinnacle of educational science.
It was the undisputed gold standard.
Oh.
I mean, the prevailing belief back then was that to understand human potential, you didn't look at behavior. You literally measured every physical dimension of the human body.
Which is just so crazy to think about now. But welcome to this deep dive, custom tailored just for you. Today we're opening up Maria Montessori's groundbreaking book, The Discovery of the Child.
Specifically Chapter 1, right?
Right, Chapter 1, A Critical Consideration of the New Pedagogy. And reading through this material, it is stunning how much of this century-old text acts as a mirror for us today.
Oh, absolutely.
It really reflects some of the deepest anxieties we have about how we raise kids right now.
So the core mission of our deep dive today is to explore a specific, really profound philosophy she introduced, which is that science is not numbers, science is spirit.
I love that line.
It's so good. And our goal is to take that underlying philosophy and give you actionable tips to transform your own home into a true place of discovery. We're going to learn how to actually observe your children rather than falling into the trap of trying to measure them all the time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can fundamentally change how we observe kids in our own living rooms, we have to understand the flaw in how society historically observed them.
Right, the architectural flaw.
Yeah, and frankly, it's a flaw that is still totally baked into our modern educational DNA.
For sure. So Montessori's critique was a direct attack on this obsession with something called anthropometry.
Anthropometry.
Yeah. For anyone familiar with the history of science, anthropometry is just the study of the measurements and proportions of the human body. But educators back then had weaponized it.
They took it to an extreme.
Exactly. They were treating physical data like the exact slope of a child's skull, their muscle density, their standing height, as a one-to-one proxy for cognitive and moral potential.
Wow.
Researchers would literally walk into classrooms carrying calipers and scales.
They were treating children like, I don't know, like lumber being graded for construction.
Yes.
Just completely bypassing the actual human being in front of them.
Well, the underlying assumption was purely industrial. It was this belief that if you could just aggregate enough quantifiable physical data, you could engineer the perfect friction-free educational system.
Right. Just crunch the numbers.
Exactly. They equated a measurable physical output with the entirety of a child's inner life. They completely ignored the spirit, the curiosity, the spontaneous joy of discovery, basically because those things can't be plotted on a graph.
Which brings up that analogy she uses in the text, which I think just perfectly captures the tragedy of this approach.
The entomologist analogy.
Yes. She says these traditional scientists were acting exactly like an entomologist who discovers a breathtaking, entirely new species of butterfly.
Right.
And the very first thing the entomologist does is catch the butterfly, immediately kill it with a pin, and then study it under a microscope.
They pin the butterfly to the board.
They pin it right to the board. And sure, they studied the corks with absolute perfection. Like, they mapped the wingspan down to the fraction of a millimeter.
They count every little scale on the wing.
Exactly. But because they killed it to measure it, they are never going to learn the mechanics of how it actually flies. They'll never witness how it interacts with its environment or how it drinks nectar.
It's tragic, really.
It is. By turning the classroom into this laboratory of rigid physical measurements, school had essentially become a morgue of data rather than a place of life.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism behind why we still do this. I mean, obviously, modern educators aren't out there measuring skull circumference with calipers anymore.
Thankfully.
Right. But we have absolutely developed our own modern versions of anthropometry. We still crave that illusion of control that numbers provide.
Because numbers feel safe. They feel definitive. If I have a number, I know exactly where my kid stands.
Precisely. When we obsess over rigid academic metrics, like when parents agonize over exactly what percentile their kid falls into for reading comprehension by age 5,
Oh, the percentiles. Everyone stresses about those.
right? Or the sheer volume of flashcards they can recite, or standardized test scores. When we do that, we are essentially still pinning the butterfly to the board.
We're doing the exact same thing.
We're measuring the rigid, easily quantifiable output, but we completely neglect the spirit, which is the actual living, breathing process of learning.
We get so hyper-focused on the data points that we become entirely blind to the life happening right in front of us. And Montessori looked at this whole system and essentially said, this isn't science. This is just arithmetic applied to anatomy.
Right. She realized that to truly understand a child, you have to let them live. You have to watch them in motion, unbothered by the pressure of immediate measurement.
So that brings us to the practical application, because if we, as parents, commit to throwing away the measuring tape and we consciously stop pinning the butterfly to the board.
Which is hard to do.
Really hard. But what does that actually look like on, say, a Tuesday afternoon in your living room? Because I think a lot of people hear the word observe and they just assume it means passively staring at your kids while they play.
Right. Just sitting on the couch watching them.
Yeah, which doesn't sound very helpful or scientific.
Well, the material introduces a really critical distinction between the tools of the scientist, the microscopes, the scales, the clipboards, and what Montessori calls the spirit of the scientist.
The spirit of the scientist?
Yeah. True scientists, think about astronomers mapping the cosmos, or field biologists observing apex predators. They don't judge, grade, or interfere with what they're watching.
Right, an astronomer doesn't yell at a comet for moving too slowly.
Exactly. Or taking the wrong trajectory.
Like, hey, speed it up. You're falling behind the other comets.
Right. Their defining operational traits are deep humility and patient observation. When a true scientist sees an unexpected or strange phenomenon, they don't immediately jump in to correct it.
They wait.
They wait, and they watch the mechanics of it. They record how it unfolds without imposing their own ego or their own predefined timeline onto the event. They just allow the subject to reveal its true nature to them.
Okay, I have to play the role of the skeptical, overwhelmed parent here.
Go for it.
Because this sounds incredibly poetic in theory, but let's look at it practically. If a child is doing something highly repetitive and, frankly, seemingly pointless.
Like pouring water back and forth between two cups.
Exactly. Spilling half of it on the floor.
Yep.
Or stacking the same 3 wooden blocks and knocking them down for 20 straight minutes. Do we genuinely just stand there and watch? I mean, isn't it our fundamental job as parents to direct that energy?
To step in and teach them something.
Right, to step in and say, hey, let's build a house now, or let's count how many blocks we have.
That anxiety is so universal, and it stems from how adult brains process efficiency.
Yep.
To an adult, a repetitive action with no new output just feels like a massive waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
And the text explicitly addresses this friction. It notes that if a child repeats an action 50 times, a traditional teacher might label them as slow.
Or assume they're stuck.
Yeah, or simply interrupt them to move on to a quote-unquote productive task.
Because our adult brains get the point after the second repetition. So by the 50th time, it feels like a glitch in the system.
Exactly. But the mechanism happening inside the child's brain is completely different. A humble observer, someone who is actively practicing that spirit of the scientist, they exercise intense, quiet patience because they understand the neurology at play.
So they aren't actually stuck.
Not at all. By quietly watching instead of intervening, you realize the child isn't failing to move on. They're actively building myelination in their brain. They're wiring their neural pathways for deep concentration.
Wow. It's kind of like, it feels like watching a caterpillar chew on a single leaf for 3 entire days.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Because to the untrained eye, it looks like a complete waste of time. It's just endless, boring consumption. But internally, that seemingly pointless repetition is exactly what provides the energy to build the butterfly.
That is a phenomenal synthesis of the concept.
Mm-hmm.
The repetition isn't a lack of progress. It is the fundamental architecture of focus.
Right.
When they pour that water for the 50th time, they are independently mastering their motor skills. They're experimenting with gravity, with volume, with cause and effect. And most importantly, They are fulfilling an inner developmental drive.
Which means when we interrupt them,
Yes.
when we jump in to show them the quote-unquote right or faster way to play, we are actually short-circuiting that entire neurological
We are
process.
stealing their discovery.
Yeah.
And when you steal the discovery, you rob them of the internal joy that fuels all future learning.
That is so powerful, stealing their discovery.
Yeah. So the actionable tip, the paradigm shift for your home is
Mhm.
this. Put on the scientist's coat. When you enter the room where your child is engaged, practice the intense discipline of leaving your adult ego outside the door.
Leave the need to control and optimize behind.
Exactly. Do not interrupt. Watch the concentration develop instead of demanding an immediate, measurable academic output.
Which honestly requires a staggering amount of restraint. It really demands the humility to admit that the child's internal developmental timetable is vastly superior to whatever lesson plan we sketched out in our heads.
It does. It takes a lot of practice. But having the mindset of a scientist isn't enough if the laboratory itself is fundamentally broken.
Oh, right, the
Yeah.
environment.
Right. Montessori realized you couldn't just change how you looked at the kids. You had to physically dismantle the environment they were trapped in, because you cannot observe natural behavior in an unnatural setting.
And this is where the source material gets shockingly aggressive for a century-old book.
It really does.
Montessori just unleashes this blistering critique of the traditional fixed school desks.
The bolted desks.
Yeah, we all know the ones. The heavy cast iron and wooden desks bolted directly to the floor, or the ones where the chair is rigidly attached to the table so you slide into it like you're getting into a cockpit.
Right.
She literally called it a torture machine designed to paralyze a child's movements.
The language is severe, but she was highlighting a mechanical reality. If you think about the architectural purpose of a fixed desk, the entire design is based on immobilization.
Keeping them completely still.
Yes. It forces the child into a state of physical passivity. And why? Because historically, teaching was viewed as pouring information into static vessels.
Right.
The bolted desk made it easier for the teacher to stand at the front and maintain absolute authoritarian control. It was an instrument of compliance, not cognitive growth.
It's the pin butterfly all over again.
Exactly.
You literally pin the child to the floor so they can't move, and then you try to measure how well they learn. It makes no sense.
And she recognized that this physical confinement was fundamentally anti-scientific. So her first revolutionary act, which was genuinely scandalous to the educational establishment at the time, was breaking those chains.
She just got rid of them.
She physically removed the fixed desks from the classroom. And in their place, she brought in small, lightweight wooden chairs and tables that the children were physically capable of picking up and moving themselves.
But wait, if we look at that practically, doesn't removing the desks just turn a room of 30 children into pure chaos?
People definitely thought that.
I mean, how is anyone supposed to focus if kids are constantly dragging furniture across the room?
Well, the mechanism behind the lightweight chair is actually brilliant, and it counters that exact fear of chaos. When a child is bolted to a heavy iron desk, the desk holds them up. The desk is responsible for their posture.
Okay, yeah.
But when you give a child a light wooden chair, they have to control their own bodies. If a child moves clumsily and bumps a light chair, it falls over with a loud, disruptive clack.
Ah, so the environment itself corrects them.
Yes. They receive immediate natural feedback from their environment. That loud noise teaches them proprioception, which is the awareness of their body in space.
Right.
So they learn to move more gracefully and quietly, not because a teacher yelled at them to sit still, but because they're mastering their own physical coordination. Montessori asked this deeply profound question. How can you study life while confining movement?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The source material uses another incredible analogy here, this time about an ant.
I love this one.
It's so good. It says, if you want to truly understand an ant's behavior, you cannot trap it in a glass jar.
Right.
Because if you put it in a jar, all you're going to observe is a panicked creature trying desperately to escape, or a depressed creature that has simply given up.
You're not seeing its natural behavior at all.
Exactly. You're just seeing its reaction to being trapped. If you want to see how an ant actually behaves, like what it builds, how it interacts with its community, you have to let it walk naturally on the ground. You have to watch it interact with its environment freely.
And that perfectly illustrates why the fixed desk had to be destroyed. You cannot observe a child's true personality, their organic interests, or the actual length of their attention span if they are trapped in the equivalent of a glass jar.
So how do we take this philosophy, breaking the torture machines and letting the ant walk freely, and translate that to a modern living room or a child's bedroom.
Because most of us don't have cast iron desks bolted to our floors.
Right, but we definitely have our own modern glass jars.
We do. And this connects directly to the concept of the Casa dei Bambini, the House of Children. The goal is to turn your home into a prepared environment by systematically removing unnecessary physical constraints.
Okay, so what does that look like?
You have to look at your house from the eye level of your child. Ask yourself, are the chairs too heavy for them to move independently? Are there clothes and drawers they can't physically open?
Or are there toys stored in those massive bins that require an adult to unlock them?
Exactly. Are they navigating an environment where the most common phrase they hear is, don't touch that, don't move that, wait for me to do it for you?
Which is so common. I mean, we've all done it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But to allow natural movement, you must curate the architecture of their space. Provide a small, lightweight stool they can carry to the window themselves if they want to look outside.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Put a selection of their clothes in low, accessible baskets so they have the autonomy to choose. Provide them with real, child-sized tools, like a small broom or a functional little pitcher for pouring water, so they can actively participate in the mechanics of the home.
Right.
When you remove the physical friction of the environment, you allow their true, unconfined spirit to emerge. And that is what you observe.
It's a complete shift in the burden of control. Instead of exhausting ourselves trying to micromanage and control the child's every single movement,
Which is exhausting.
so exhausting. Instead of
Right.
that, we meticulously curate and prepare the environment, and then we just set the child free within it.
That is the essence of the schist. The environment serves as the container, but within that container, there is total physical and psychological freedom. Your role as a parent transforms from being a warden who enforces stillness to being a scientist who observes life unfolding.
From warden to scientist. I love that. We've covered some massive paradigm shifts today, pulling from a text that is, over a century old, but diagnoses our modern anxieties with surgical precision.
It really does.
Let's summarize the core actionable takeaways for you, the listener, as you look at your own home this week. First and foremost, make a conscious daily decision to throw away the measuring tape.
Yes.
We all fall into the trap of constant comparison, but we really have to fight that industrial urge. Stop agonizing over exactly how many vocabulary words your toddler has memorized compared to the neighbor's kid.
Or stressing over whether their block stacking speed puts them in the 90th percentile.
Exactly, because those metrics are just the dimensions of the pinned butterfly.
They tell you nothing about how the child will fly.
Right. Instead, channel your energy into observing whether their personality is growing peacefully. Are they developing deep concentration when they play? Are they moving with joy and autonomy? The ultimate rule for your home, the paradigm shift to internalize, is this: observe, do not measure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reminds us that true education, whether it happens in a formal classroom or just on the rug in your living room, is ultimately an act of deep respect.
Beautifully said.
It is about honoring the human being in front of you. When you practice the quiet humility of a scientist and provide the physical freedom for natural movement, you aren't just raising an academically capable child, you are protecting a human spirit from being reduced to a data point.
Protecting a human spirit.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly powerful mandate. And it leaves me with a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
Well, we've spent this entire time talking about early childhood, about how reducing kids to mere metrics and confining their physical movement destroys their natural drive to discover. But consider how this mechanism applies to us as adults.
Oh, wow.
Because we spend so much time curating our adult environments for maximum relentless efficiency. We basically bolt ourselves to our own heavy desks.
We really do.
In our careers, in our daily routines, are we measuring our own worth by the circumference of our heads and our daily productivity metrics? Are we judging ourselves purely by the numbers in our bank accounts and the rigid schedules we force ourselves to endure?
That is a tough question.
It is. If freedom of movement and freedom from constant measurement is what reveals the true spirit of a child, what parts of your own true personality are currently trapped in the glass jars you've built for yourself? Are we pinning ourselves to the board?
Something to think about, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a privilege to explore these profound concepts with you. Keep observing the world and yourself with humility and curiosity. See you next time.